Talk Boxing News.
Okay, and now it's time for the second installment of our weekend recap. Unbeaten up-and-comer Rhiannon Dixon in the lightweight division.
She advanced to a professional record of 7 wins, no losses, and no draws. No recorded knockouts, not yet. Opposite the ring, Christine Shergold. This weekend on the undercard of Warrington versus Lopez.
Say it all the time. Rhiannon Dixon might not come from some deep amateur background. She wasn't Team GB or anything like that. But for a fighter who's somewhat of a late starter in the sport, she has a very high ceiling, a lot of ability, showed real improvement in this fight because
She's fast and she's strong.
it's easy for a fighter to pick up bad habits when they are athletically gifted. When they have speed, it's very easy to fall in love with it and rely on it.
We saw a more poised Rhiannon Dixon in this fight than we've seen in previous instances, with a more measured approach.
She's fast enough that she can invade the pocket and get off 2 and 3 and 4 punch combinations with little consequence. At this level, she's fast enough that she can do that.
But that's not what you want. If you are to get better, if you are to reach the elite level, the upper echelon of a given weight, the upper echelon of the sport,
You've got to tidy it up. You have to take a measured approach. And that's what Rhiannon Dixon did opposite the ring. Christine Shergold, boxing comfortably from the outside, fast enough to get off the shots and get them off safely.
fighting out of the southpaw stance, using that jab and bringing over that backhand, that straight left hand. Rhiannon Dixon has a quality straight left hand and a killer right hook.
The fighting pharmacist. Never before have I seen a more unique blend. An unassuming fighter you'd never think had killer instincts in the ring.
It's Rhiannon Dixon.
One of the hang-ups that I've had with Rhiannon Dixon in previous fights, previous instances, is that while she's very fast and her combinations are quite fluid, they're not always defensible. She was on the receiving end of a couple of interesting right hands in the Adina Kiss fight and some other fights.
You don't want to see that when you're talking about a southpaw. Rhiannon Dixon, she's a southpaw.
I've often said that at this level, she can get away with eating those right hands from those fighters, but as she progresses and the quality of competition gets better, you don't still want to eat backhands, straight right hands from orthodox fighters. Straight right hands are often dubbed.
The straight right hand out of the orthodox stance is often dubbed the southpaw killer. It's a punch that southpaws in particular are particularly susceptible to. And what I liked about this past weekend's performance from Rhiannon Dixon is she managed the distance well enough that she didn't get hit with those shots.
As stated, Rhiannon Dixon has a mean streak. You'd never know it to look at her. And more often than not, what you see from Rhiannon is she jumps right in, gets off 3 and 4 punch combinations because she's fast enough and fluid enough to do it. But as a result of that, she sometimes ends up eating backhands, straight right hands from orthodox fighters. And what I really liked about this performance is she was more controlled, more poised, boxing comfortably from the outside, getting off those straight punches, those straight shots, and the occasional right hook.
She showed more temperance, more patience than she normally does.
Very comfortable and very fluid. Not dissimilar from what you see from 2-time super lightweight champion Regis Prograis, who always looks very relaxed in the ring, but he still is a prolific puncher.
That's what you want.
Poise and control. Poise counts, and this was a more poised Rhiannon Dixon than we've seen in previous instances. Just taking her time, picking her shots, picking her punches.
Staying defensible.
It's important. She's in a talent-rich division where there are a lot of good fighters coming through at or around these weights. Campaigning in the lightweight division, that's 135 pounds. That's where Katie Taylor reigns as that division's undisputed champion. And some of those more talented fighters down there at 130 pounds. Very soon, they're going to be moving up in weight. They're going to be right there with Rhiannon Dixon.
So it's important that she develop.
Develop on schedule, because very soon the lightweight division could become a very crowded place. I very much liked what I saw. I liked the performance, liked the speed on her punches, the shot selection, and the movement, beating those feet.
Congratulations to Rhiannon Dixon for advancing to a professional record of 7 wins, no losses, no draws, no recorded knockouts, not yet.
A productive year for the Wigan, Lancashire woman who fought 3 times. Let's hope she fights 3 more in the coming year.
A job well done. Look the part.
We then come to some tweets from veteran boxing scribe Jake Jonovan in reference to yesterday's middleweight action. Jake said, DAZN main card now underway after halftime break for fans watch England versus France. Felix Cash is in the ring now. The win will set up a clash between him and Ammo Williams next spring. 2 days in a row, Austin Ammo Williams was disrespected in separate interviews. Darren Barker showed a lack of professionalism in his session yesterday. Felix Cash shows his ass, shoving Williams during a post-fight interview after an 8-round win over Kelso Nieves.
You could actually use Dixon versus Shergold and Cash versus Nieves as a what to do and what not to do kind of thing.
Where Rhiannon Dixon took on a more measured approach, as opposed to just coming out like a bat out of hell, guns blazing, throwing everything she could at Christine, she took a more measured approach.
Felix Cash did the opposite with Kelso Nieves. He came out hard and fast, front foot heavy, throwing big shots, big punches, early.
You know, that's the kind of thing that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on, the fighter's physical attributes, his overall punching power, and the man opposite the ring. How durable is the guy really? Kelso Nieves has been knocked out before, but that was up there at super middleweight, whereas this was a middleweight contest. He proved to be a stubborn customer for Felix Cash. He was front foot heavy, really laying into the guy, and he did this early into the fight, early, when the guy can take those shots.
Austin Ammo Williams made light of this himself while he is on the ones and twos commentating the fight. He said the same thing.
Felix made his job a lot harder, laying into the guy as early as he did before punishment had set in, because in effect he exhausted his own energy reserves. His gas tank seemed to have been failing him in the middle of the match.
He thought he could kill the guy quick, but he starts laying into the guy early into the fight when the guy can take those shots, when the guy can take those punches while he's still fresh. And as a result of hitting him with everything but the kitchen sink, Felix looked a little bit tired in the middle.
Unbeaten Felix Cash, who sports a professional record of 16 wins, no losses, and no draws, 10 knockouts to Ammo Austin Williams' 13 wins, no losses, and no draws.
9 knockouts. These two unbeaten fighters are supposed to be meeting up with each other in spring.
Ammo Williams was in action not that long ago on the undercard of Chocolatito versus Estrada 3, and this past weekend, Felix Cash, his prelude, that took place on the undercard of Warrington versus Lopez. And I gotta tell you, Felix Cash, he really didn't look the part. Long gone is the guy who dispatched Denzel Bentley.
A victory that's aged very well for Felix Cash, even if Felix himself hasn't been looking the part. The last 2 fights
Just doesn't look like the same guy.
He only fought once last year.
That was the aforementioned Denzel Bentley fight, and he got in 2 fights. 2 fights this year, 2 fights with this past weekend's fight. Though those 2 fights, he just hasn't looked up to scratch.
Comes out guns a-blazing against Kelso Nieves early in the match. Blows his load, blows his wad.
Makes the job harder than it needs to be. Very messy, mid-range to inside. It wasn't until he started relying on his basic fundamentals, his boxing, getting on his jab, and
setting up his punches.
he won the fight, you understand. There's no question who won the match. There's no question who won the fight, but it's how he won the fight that's an area of concern ahead of what's supposed to be an Ammo Williams fight in spring of next year. I feel like while Felix might be the bigger guy and the stronger puncher, Ammo Williams is the more fluid fighter, the more fluid boxer, with better shot selection than Felix Cash.
Felix's career is too stop and start.
He had some issues, some family stuff going on last year, which is why he didn't fight more.
But he did manage to have 2 fights this year, and he's not looking like the same guy that got Denzel Bentley the fuck out of there.
Ammo had his own stuff going on outside of the ring. I mean, everybody's got baggage. Everybody's got issues. But under the hot lights,
Ammo's been looking better.
in what is to be this battle of the unbeatens, 2 of Matchroom's prospects in the middleweight division, you have to give Ammo the edge.
Post-fight, Felix Cash lost his cool with Ammo Williams. He shoved him after uttering a bunch of gibberish. I couldn't understand the guy.
You could see he was upset with himself, perhaps frustrated at his performance and the fact that Ammo Williams was not only in attendance for the fight, for the performance, but he was goading him.
Ammo got under Felix's skin. You could see that.
Felix vowed to knock Ammo spark out, though this Kelso Nieves fight wasn't the best advertisement for such a promise. If he's to stand any chance against Ammo, he's gonna need to be better. Better than he has been in his last 2 fights, and I'm not confident that he will be.
Maybe he's a little stronger, but he ain't better overall. I like Ammo for the fight next year.
We then come to the continued fallout. Teofimo Lopez's lackluster showing opposite the ring, Sandor Martin, and Teddy Atlas's cries of corruption.
You know, it's funny that Teddy Atlas thinks Sandor Martin spending the whole fight on his bike was enough for him to win a decision.
That's not the logic that he employed when Canelo Alvarez shared the ring with Gennady Golovkin the first time. Canelo Alvarez, like Sandor Martin, spent the majority of the fight on his bike, but Canelo, unlike Sandor, he got off more power shots and asserted himself a little bit more than Sandor did. Myself, I feel that both Sandor and Canelo lost those fights. I feel Sandor lost last night's fight, and I feel that Canelo lost the first Golovkin fight.
I've always felt that way, and it's not the first time I've said that here on the channel.
Whereas Teddy's rationale seems a bit inconsistent because to the eye, Canelo threw more punches in the first Golovkin fight than Sandor threw last night opposite the ring Teofimo Lopez, and yet Teddy thinks that Canelo lost and Sandor won?
How's it work?
I'll tell you how it works. I told you how it worked in my previous video. These days, Teddy's more of an MMA guy. And, you know, what he says
for reactions, because these days, he's all about the hot takes.
if you think Canelo lost the first Golovkin fight because he spent too much time backpedaling on the back foot, then by all rights, you should think the exact same thing about the Sandor Martin fight because Sandor threw even less punches than Canelo did opposite the ring Golovkin the first time. It doesn't make sense. Ryan Garcia's contentions don't make any sense. That Sandor won unless they chose to rob him.
Sandor Martin did in that fight the exact same thing that Emmanuel Tagoe did in your fight 2 fights ago.
Granted that Ryan Garcia did score a knockdown in that Emmanuel Tagoe fight, though all the same, Ryan looked just as limited, chasing around Emmanuel Tagoe as Teofimo looked yesterday opposite the ring Sandor Martin. And it's because a guy who won't engage, a guy who's fighting a negative fight whilst backpedaling, circling away from the opponent, it's hard to look good against a guy like that, whether you're Teofimo Lopez or Ryan Garcia. But Ryan was quite unsympathetic.
So why don't you go in there with Sandor and show us how it's done?
Instead of fighting Mercito Hesta, a guy who campaigns below 140 pounds, 140, where you're set to fight him, why don't you skip that, fight Sandor, and show Teofimo and everybody else how you deal with a guy like that?
You know there's next to no chance of that happening.
I don't think either Teddy Atlas or Ryan Garcia are in any position to talk. Now, Regis Prograis, newly crowned WBC super lightweight champion, Regis is another matter. Regis reacted to the drama unfolding post-fight between Teofimo and his wife.
His soon-to-be ex-wife wouldn't let him hold his own son while he was in the ring. Something is wrong over there.
To which Regis Prograis responded, "That's sad."
So here's what I think. I don't think yesterday's fight was a robbery because I don't think Sandor Martin did enough.
That much you knew already. The criticisms that Teofimo is under from guys like Teddy Atlas and Ryan Garcia, there's a lot of wishy-washy people in the sport of boxing. Teddy and Ryan, that's two of them.
I think the right man won the fight.
And I think that Sandor Martin, because he characteristically fights negative and backpedals most of a fight, he can make anybody look bad, Ryan Garcia included. But if Ryan Garcia knows something that Teofimo don't, why don't you get in the ring with Sandor and show us how it's done?
Go on, sweet chicks, do your worst.
Regis Prograis continued. All jokes aside, I hope Teofimo is okay. Boxing is a tough and lonely sport, and it can be very taxing mentally. I think he might need some changes in his personal life.
Regis Prograis is the one guy that I agree with in all of this.
I'll tell you what I think. I think that Sandor Martin didn't do enough. I think people are being a little bit too hard on Teofimo, taking cheap shots.
I think Sandor Martin is better than he's given credit for, and people still haven't realized that, in spite of upsetting the apple cart for Mikey Garcia.
And whatever people's expectations were ahead of this fight, I told you here on this channel, this ain't gonna be easy. This is a frustrating stylistic matchup for Teofimo, and it could go the other way.
It's got genuine banana skin energy because Teofimo was training for an orthodox fighter, whereas Sandor Martin is a southpaw and a short-notice opponent.
And while I don't think Teofimo looked good yesterday, I do think the right man won the fight, and all the context is being removed from the conversation. There really aren't a lot of guys that are going to look good opposite the ring as Sandor Martin because he simply won't engage.
His best attribute is his movement. His best attribute are his feet, and he uses them.
It takes certain ingredients to get to a guy like that and get him out of there, and not everybody has them.
But Teofimo Lopez was busier, and I think that was enough.
Second fight at 140 pounds. Do you think he's now fully comfortable at that weight?
No. I think it's an adjustment, you know. It sounds 5 pounds sounds like nothing, but it's a lot of weight.
Would you favor him right now over Regis, or is that kind of a 50-50 fight? Do you think Teo's fight doesn't have a fight?
I think you'd have to favor Prograis. but I think that Teofimo can beat him.
I don't. Bob Arum addressed certain realities about Teofimo's ongoing super lightweight campaign, and I've always said that Teofimo's...
You know that post-fight, while the camera was still rolling, Teofimo could be heard asking if he still has it.
To which Regis Prograis responded, too much pressure. He's breaking mentally.
You know that I didn't wait good up until the Sandor-Martin fight to start saying that Regis Prograis would be too much for Teofimo Lopez. I've maintained that energy throughout. In fact, I've maintained that energy since before Teofimo even moved up to super lightweight.
And I still maintain that energy when it comes to a lot of fighters that are still down there at lightweight. Fighters like Devin Haney, fighters like Gervonta Davis. Opposite the ring, the cream of the crop at 140. The dangerous fighters. They might find that 140 is a far cry from 135.
140 ain't JV like 135, you know.
It's not a bunch of teens and tweens up there at 140. It's not a bunch of pubescent young guys up there at 140 pounds. Those are grown men up there with grown man strength.
It's not a knock on Devin or any of those other young guys. It's not even a knock on Teofimo, but 140 is one of the deeper divisions in the entire sport of boxing, and I've never liked Teofimo Lopez's chances against the upper echelon guys, the elite level guys at 140 pounds, Regis Prograis included.
And I, unlike many of you, didn't wait until the Sandor-Martin fight to start saying that. If you've been paying attention, if you've been following this channel long enough, I've been saying it. I've been saying it throughout. What Teofimo had working for him at lightweight may not be there at super lightweight. You were big for a 135-pound fighter, and you were a strong puncher, but at 140 pounds, you may find that you're not the biggest puncher in the room.
And given Teofimo Lopez's ongoing tumultuous home life, the issues with his wife, the ongoing issues with his father, the corner situation, something definitely needs to change.
And it needs to change fast, because it's hard enough trying to campaign at this particular weight when you got this many killers running around. There aren't that many safe choices at 140 pounds. That's hard enough and bad enough as it is.
No, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that Teofimo didn't look good opposite the ring Sandor-Martin, because I don't think a lot of guys would look good opposite the ring Sandor-Martin. But
Sandor, formidable and frustrating as he might be, he's not the biggest challenge at 140 pounds. Far from it.
Just a taste of what 140 has to offer.